Support for this episode of Judaism Unbound comes from Avodah. Avodah's Justice Fellowship is designed to foster the field of Jewish social justice leaders working effectively and sustainably in Chicago and New York City. Fellows attend evening and weekend sessions, November through June, to deepen their justice analysis, build pluralistic Jewish community, and develop a Jewish framework for justice work. If you're a professional or activist working on local justice issues in your 20s or 30s, go to avodah.net/fellowship to apply and learn more. Elul, the final month of the Jewish year, serves as a period of introspection and as an on-ramp into the high holidays of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Elul Unbound is Judaism Unbound's annual observance of this month. Each week of Elul, we release episodes of Judaism Unbound that explore the month's themes and how we can creatively experiment with this time period to make it as meaningful and liberatory as possible. You can register to participate in Elul Unbound yourself. Join us for Elul Shabbat gatherings throughout this month, engage with Elul-related writing, video, audio, and so much more via our bi-weekly Elul Unbound email list, and connect with other Judaism Unbounders committed to making the most of this time period by heading to judaismunbound.com/ELUL2025. That's judaismunbound.com/Elul2025. This is Judaism Unbound, episode 498, Elul 2025. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Lex Rofberg.
And I'm Wendie Bernstein-Lash.
And Wendie's not Dan, but that's actually a sign. That's a signal of the flow of time in the Judaism Unboundiverse. It's a very exciting thing when we get Wendie Bernstein-Lash here, because that means that we have arrived at Elul Unbound.
Toot toot!
Yes, it is a very exciting time. Sound effects are totally called for. But we have this amazing experience every year that was launched in 2018. So we're now experiencing our 7-year anniversary, which means our 8th overall observance of Elul Unbound. And it's this on-ramp month, this sort of final month of the Jewish year that leads us into the new year, into Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And so it's this incredible moment of introspection, of sort of gathering ourselves and noticing what we want to work on this coming year, individually, communally, globally. And we've had an incredible time journeying through it these past bunch of years, led by Wendie Bernstein-Lash. And so when we get to this month, we have these mini episodes that are a chance to dive into various themes of this month, to notice the flow of time, not only on the annual scale, but also on the 7-year Shemitah cycle scale. We use Elul Unbound as a chance to do that. Wendie also teaches a class about the month of Elul and its themes called Elul, Your On-Ramp into Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. By the way, there are 3 other classes, less directly tied to Elul, but also tied to this month's themes, which you can register for all of them at judaismunbound.com/classes. Financial aid is available. And so that's a little window into some of the bits of Elul Unbound. But Wendie, that's a lot from me. I'd love to hear from you. What is Elul? What is Elul Unbound?
So, as you said, Elul is the last month of the year, if you count Rosh Hashanah, which most people do as the first month of the year. And it's this preparatory time to get everything in order, get yourself in order. And so when you hit Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, those days of Oz, you've done some reflection, you've done some work. It's a time to seek forgiveness. It's a time to do some self-improvement, think about what's coming while you're thinking about the past. It's really this transitional time. You know, we're very lucky that we get a whole month to do it. You get to build and build and build and see what arises as you get closer and closer to the holidays. And there are spiritual practices which are traditional, and there are other spiritual practices that are less traditional. And it's just a time to reflect, prepare, thinking about where you want to go.
100%. And that where you want to go, it hints at a word that we've made core to this Elul Unbound experience, and that's on-ramp. It's an on-ramp month. Like literally that on the road tells you where you're going, or at least which highway you're getting on. On the road, it's highway. When it's here, it's Yud He Vav He. I don't know. Do rhyming catchphrase. Let's play around with that. But that is important, that this is an on-ramp month, that we sort of give ourselves a gradual build into the high holidays. the origin of this came from a sense that you and I, and also Esty, who was another sort of co-founder of this project back in the day, a sense that we shared that the high holidays are not meant to just sort of arrive and we're there on Rosh Hashanah and like, oh, time to calibrate what we're doing for this new year, all like in real time, sitting in a synagogue maybe, or wherever we are on high holidays. There's a lot to do. And so this chance to on-ramp for an entire month is really helpful. We've also, another sort of catchphrase we've mobilized is the idea of a Holi month. HOLI hyphen, I think, month, like holiday, Holi month. This notion of an entire month that is elevated in sacredness. We're not part of a society that really does Holi months. You could argue certain holiday. I mean, Western Christian hegemony, we have like the holiday season, quote unquote, that I think lends a kind of air to Thanksgiving through Christmas and New Year's. But like, there's not as much of a sense of like months have character. Jewishly, there is that sense. And Elul is among the months that has the most sort of deep, storied characters. And the deep, storied character is this chance to really take stock and evaluate where one's at personally and communally. On the practical side, there's an email list that you can sign up for, and the wonderful Emma Newberry, our program associate, is putting together awesome resources to send out as part of this couple times a week email list, where you can dive into particular spiritual practices like Wendie mentioned, receive cool articles that people have written, watch videos, all sorts of different modalities of experience for Elul, and also a trademark of ours, there are wake-up calls. We started today with a shofar blast from Wendie, who is very, very great at blowing shofar. And there's other kinds of wake-up calls that we incorporate into the month every time those emails go out. So there's a little sound effect of some kind every time those go out. So that's a little bit of the practicals of Elul Unbound. I did want to note, you said something powerful that I think was a slip of the tongue, but there's no typos in Judaism, especially Rabbinic Judaism. Whenever there's a typo, you have to find meaning in it, and that's true verbally, in my view, as well. You said days of Oz. You said Oz, plural. You were describing, the high holidays, the Yamim Noraim in Hebrew, which is often translated days of awe. But I kind of want to take that as an instruction to experience these days as days of Oz, like AWW, like aw. That syllable, what is it, onomatopoeia? The sound, aw, is very different from the notion of awe, AWE, which, another translation of the Hebrew word is sometimes fear. But this notion of AWW, aw, like, makes my heart sort of flutter a little. It feels like we're bringing a little bit of the love energy. My hope is that we can take these days that are like, they're associated with high bimas, platforms, and people wearing fancy robes, and like, let's bring some awe to it. Let's like find ways to not only be in the AWE, but the AWW. That different character sound might be worth actually holding purposefully as we head into days that people experience as kind of very intimidating.
Yeah, I love when these things pop out that we hadn't intended. When I think about awe, I also think about the kindness that comes with that. We're looking at a baby and we're, look at how cute they are. And that we don't necessarily do that to ourselves. Because this is a time when a lot of people seek forgiveness or ask for forgiveness, noting that we have to first come from a place of self-care and self-love in order to not have clenched fists and say, you should forgive me or I should be forgiven. We come from that place of, oh goodness, I have to have some compassion for myself. I have to have compassion for somebody else, that they were doing the best that they can. One of my mentors, Sylvia Borstein, who will put a link to a meditation that she did either last year or the year before, has this lovely way of saying, what we need to say to ourselves is, sweetheart, you're doing the best that you can. And I think that holding that energy for Elul is really lovely. Like, somebody else is doing the best that they can, or was doing the best that they can. We're doing the best that we can. And so to take that awe, like, we're doing the best that we can into Elul.
I love the connection you brought to like looking at a baby. What if we looked at ourselves like we look at babies, with the sense of like, oh, this is a tiny human that is almost automatically going to make more havoc and cause more trouble than good, but they're doing the best they can. I love that idea. Thank you, Wendie. So this ani ledodi vidodi li, this notion of I am my beloved's and my beloved is mine, that's often how it's translated.
Famously, it's the acrostic that's associated with the month of Elul, with ani being the first letter of Elul, lidodi, vidodi li. You get this E-L-U-L in English, or in Hebrew, aleph, lamed, vav, lamed situation. So that quote from Song of Songs is often tied to this particular month of introspection. And on the self-love front, we kind of wanted to play with reading it slightly differently today. Ani lidodi vidodi li. So we could break that down. Ani means I. Lidodi is kind of to my loved one, to my beloved, something like that. Vidodi, that's just to repeat. V is and, so you get and my beloved. Li is to me, or is mine. That's, all the little tchotchkes that people make with this quotation on it, say, I am my beloved's and my beloved is mine. Every once in a while, though, you'll hear people say something really interesting, which is they'll drop the apostrophe S. And it might be because they don't know the original Hebrew or because they've just heard it this way, but you'll sometimes hear, I am my beloved and my beloved is mine, which fundamentally changes the quote. And some could hear that and be like, oh my gosh, that destroys the whole point. Like, you're trying to articulate if this is associated with a ring exchange at a wedding or with some sort of romantic context. You're trying to say not I am my beloved, but rather I am my beloved's. I am sort of cleaving myself. I am making myself connected to a beloved. That's what the apostrophe S does. But hearing it as ani dodi, I am my beloved. It's a stretch. The Hebrew speaking listeners are going to tell me, Lex, it's probably not exactly what it means. But interpretively, there's always a little wiggle room to play with the precise Hebrew. That's one of the gifts of our tradition. And so we're reading this as what happens if we understand ourselves to be the beloved in this situation. And to preempt any concerns people or even I myself have, I'm always nervous about being too into self-care and too into me, I stuff. I think we have a struggle with that in spiritual spaces, in meditation-driven spaces where we talk about inner work to the exclusion of other kinds of work. That's not what we mean here. But we do want, as we take on this moment of introspection, to see ourselves as beloved and not only as the recipient of our clenched fist that we're pounding in a literal sense often on high holidays during services. I am my beloved. It shifts the character of this quote. And Wendie, I'd love to hear from you on that.
I was just thinking about like a Mobius strip, which is a wonderful representation where if you take a piece of paper and you twist it and then you put the ends together, a strip of paper, and you twist it, you get a Mobius strip, which it's amazing to think about it, but you travel on the outside and without stopping and you travel on the inside. And this is what we're talking about here. It's not a separate, I'm just going to do self-care and self-transformation. I'm not going to worry about the outside, or I'm going to worry about the outside and not do my inner work. They're really tied together. So here in Elul, and probably all throughout life, like keeping that idea of what's inside is outside. What I do for others, I do for myself. What I do for myself, I'm doing for others. Really like thinking about it in that context.
That's so cool. And I also would argue Mobius kind of sounds like an Ashkenazi pronunciation of a Hebrew word, like Mobius, like Yichus. Like there's a lot of us endings to things in Yiddish. There's often words that end in ut in Hebrew that like become us. So Mobius, Mobiut. There's a real power to what you just said. You've blown my mind because yeah, that's a literal item, substance, whatever we call a Mobius strip, that inner and outer are totally blurred. We've upended that entire binary of what is inside of us versus what is outside of us. The Mobius strip makes both. I think that there's also a way in which for so many of us, like we're in the midst of a world full of pain and oppression, and there's a lot of us who, on the self-compassion, self-care front, like, we're tuned in to the ways in which we are and are not marching in the streets, participating in different forms of protest that might not just be in the streets. Like, we're aware of all the things that we're not doing. And I think for many of us that want to be serving the betterment of our world, a more liberated future, there is a real erring on the side, like high holidays, of like clenching our fists and pounding our chest for all the ways we haven't done enough. I'm not here to say we shouldn't feel that at all. I do think that we have other moments in the year, in the ecology of Jewish holidays and challah months. We have other moments in the year that are really like, hey, people, focus on the ways you need to be out participating in the betterment of our world. I think of Passover, which so clearly is a holiday of holding the importance of liberation. I think of even Purim, where we see the difference between a world where those speak out in the face of violence and injustice and a world where people do not. We see the horrors that result at the end of the Purim story in Esther, when violence takes a group of people from victim to actually becoming oppressors and killing others. That happens at the end of Esther. We can notice all these things in many moments of the year, and we need moments in the year that call on us to be like, look, we're trying our best. We're doing what we can. And I think the fall time, seasonally, is a good time for that. We're sort of waving goodbye to summer. Things are about to get real rough weather-wise in many areas of the world. It's going to be cold. It's going to be hard. And so we hold that we're doing our best as we go into that. And so, again, Ani Lidodi Vidodi Li, I can be the beloved of me in the same way that our communities, our world that we try to channel love towards can also be the dode, be the beloved.
Yeah. And as I was sitting here, I was just having a conversation with somebody yesterday about living into your life, taking care of your kids, doing your work, and how do we support change and liberation. And so as you were talking about this, I was thinking, oh, it's that Mobius strip. It's that maybe the Dodi stands for liberation. My liberation is tied with your liberation. Your liberation is tied with my liberation. I happened to put on the bottom of one of my emails a quote from Toni Morrison, which is the function of freedom is to free someone else. So if we're
What book did Toni Morrison write that might be relevant to this conversation? Maybe Beloved?
Very cool. Yeah. So I'm just seeing all, as is usual when we do these podcasts, the threads of different pieces coming together. I hadn't thought about Ani Lidodi Vidodi Li as my liberation is your liberation, my love, I love you and you love me. But why not?
Why not, indeed? I think that's the note to close this episode on. One thing I didn't mention at the top, we are releasing these Elul episodes this time around as a sort of core episodes of Judaism Unbound. They're coming out on Fridays. In the past, we've had them as sort of midweek bonus episodes. It really felt to us this year especially that Elul is cherished enough, important enough that we would want to allocate that space on our main podcast episodes to the spirit of this day, to noticing the ways we can work on ourselves, to noticing the ways our Jewish community more broadly is in deep need of working on itself, and also, as we do so, holding compassion for ourselves, for our fellow Jews, for our world, for every directionality of compassion. We felt like these merited core real estate in the Judaism Unbound ecosystem, and so many of these episodes, 3 of them are going to be coming out on Fridays. There is going to be one that's going to come out midweek because there is a special episode of Judaism Unbound in a few weeks to mark our 500th overall, and that will be on a Friday. But we will have these episodes coming to you over the next bunch of weeks. As I mentioned at the beginning, we have our email list. You can sign up for that at judaismunbound.com/Elul. That's ELUL. Receive all sorts of amazing, juicy nuggets, some lighthearted, some really deep that'll pull on your heartstrings, some just intellectually interesting. All of that can come to your inbox if you sign up for the email list. You can come to our Zoom gatherings that we're doing. We're doing 3 of them this year, not one for every week, but we're doing 3 to mark Shabbat together during Elul, and those are coming up soon. You can also sign up for those at the same link. We're just so grateful for your immersion in Elul, and I'm going to pass it over to Wendie to say one last thing before we head out.
Yeah, I want to say about the spiritual direction piece. So if you have been listening to past podcasts, you probably know about spiritual direction or hashpa'ah. It's a companioning practice where you get a chance to talk to someone who is trained in listening and spirituality. And I have a bunch of colleagues who do this who are donating sessions. So you can
And
sign
also
up.
you are doing sessions.
And I
on
get
the
to
self-love front, self-care front.
Yes. Me and others are offering this as a gift to help you figure out your Elul questions and just to be there to support you. So take advantage of that. Look forward to connecting you to some of the wonderful Jewish spiritual directors that are out there.
100%. So that's a great note. We've got a number of things you can sign up for, all at judaismunbound.com/ELUL. One of them, spiritual direction, which Wendie just mentioned. Another, our upcoming Zoom gatherings to mark Shabbat together during Elul. And third, this will get you sort of all of it. It's the meta sign up. It's the email list where by signing up, you'll hear about these other things and get reminders. So that is your first stop for sure. judaismunbound.com/Elul. We, as always, are just so looking forward to a month of spiritual meaning making. I have said on the podcast, and I will say it again, that the high holidays are actually not my favorite time of the whole Jewish year. I struggle with both the practicalities of how they are done in most Jewish spaces. I find them pretty intimidating and alienating to a lot of people, and I wish that other things were kind of the main star of the Jewish year cycle. I wish other moments were the ones where people were like, oh yes, I have to be there. It's important for me to be there. But for whatever reasons, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur hold that. I have found that Elul Unbound the last bunch of years has really helped me build less of a contentious relationship with this time of year, because it has taken that intimidating set of things and spread them out and allowed me to really soak in to a time of year that deserves our time and consideration, but which in my view is best experienced over a gradual on-ramp and not as, boom, this is here. You're not prepared. I actually don't, there's that famous book, This Is Real and You're Completely Unprepared. I think we can be prepared. Let's use this month to build our spiritual capacities and muscles, to love on one another. And I look forward to doing so with some future podcasts with all of you, with these gatherings, and with all the other juiciness of the month. So thank you so much for listening. And with that, this has been Judaism Unbound.